Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. I hope you are feeling awesome today. And firstly, I would like to welcome the Honorable Mrs. Siti Mukminatun as our lecturer for Introduction to Linguistics, and to all our beloved friends from English Department of G class. Today we are going to present our discussion and presentation about sociolinguistics that refer from Linguistic for Beginners, Basic Concepts by Thariq Rahman. But please let me introduce the member of the group. I, Annisa Cahyaningrum, as the first speaker, and my friends, Meiza, Maulida, Munawaroh, as the second speaker. First of all, let's having a brief review that several weeks ago we have learned about the microlinguistics, and they are phonetics, phonology, syntax, morphology, semantics, and pragmatics. Now let's move into the microfield of linguistics. Sociolinguistics is a vast subject, and we have divided the material into 5 chapters. They are definitions, variety of language, language worldview, language and gender, and the last is linguistics politeness. Let's start the presentations by Meiza Maulida.
So, what is sociolinguistic? Sociolinguistic is the study of language in relation to society. It has several subjects, such as the varieties of language, language and worldview, language and gender, linguistic politeness, and identity and language planning. It actually has 5 subjects, but in this opportunity, we will explain to you about only 4 subjects according to the available materials in Thariq Rahman's book. So let's next to the first subject.
Before we learn deeper about sociolinguistics, we must understand the basic concern about it, the varieties of language. Basically, languages are merely abstractions. The example is English. Do you know that English exists? Have you ever seen it? Yes, maybe you have seen dictionaries and grammar books rules because they are exist, but the spoken language came first. In this chapter, we are going to talk with this concept, the language according to use and according to the user. The first one is idiolect. When people are using the same language, same sounds for object, and when the other speakers ignore the minor differences in the way other speakers pronounce words or use grammatical rules. For the example is, people have their unique of language patterns. Trump, you know, President Trump uses the word tremendous often and in particular intonations. He has this character particular to himself when talking. And if you know the most famous YouTuber in Indonesia, Atta Halilintar, he often say Sia instead of Sia. The next is register. Register is the variety of language, and according to its use is dependent upon its functions. It's meant to certain use and not used outside from that particular professions. The example is, if you use it to teach medicine, you will put it in the special language of medicines that derive from Latin and Greek. Thus, a fat person will be called obese, and inability to sleep will be diagnosed as insomnia. The classification next is diglosia. A special situation arises when a language has a specific high variety, which is used in all formal domain. On the contrary, ordinary conversation is in the low variety. It's a concept that was called by the linguist Charles Ferguson. High variety is used in formal occasion and it is not used in ordinary conversation by anybody. It is learned in schools and used in classrooms, offices, courts, places of worship, and etc. The high variety has got great prestige because it is the language of classical literature and religious texts. It unites people the formal written level. The low variety is used in ordinary conversation and common use for people. So the example of the high variety and the low variety is a formal speech in a formal event. President Barack Obama greets another president. And the low variety is what's up, is the informal form of what is going on or what happened.
Then dialect. The dialect is the variety of a language used by a geographical area. They are mutually intelligible, and people who speak one dialect can understand the speakers of another dialect. It is a variety of the same language and not the different language. For example, we know that there are American English and British English. If you want to express a time when you have done your job and you need recreation, in American English, that's called holiday. But in British English, it's called vacation or halls. This is a dialect, and besides, dialect also involves sounds, grammar, and pronunciation to distinguish them from another. And there are two views about dialects. The first one is the traditional view. This view says that the standard language is the one which is used by educated people. It's also used in the domains of power such as higher education, administration, judiciary, armed forces, and politics. Dialects that are spoken by uneducated people will considered rough, rustic, substandard, and inferior by educated people. The second view is the modern linguistic views. All dialects are basically varieties which are mutually comprehensible. A language is the sum total of all its dialects. This can be represented as follows, where L is language and D1 until Dn are its dialects. And everybody speaks a dialect. Even if someone speaks what we call the standard language, that is a dialect. Next, there are some important notes about dialects. First is all dialects are equal. Their structure is similar and there are no scientific reasons for calling one of them superior or inferior. The second is the standard variety is meant to serve many functions. For example, being used in education, law, commerce, and so on, and has larger vocab than other dialects. And the last, for non-linguistic reasons, for example, ethnic identity, nationalism, mutually intelligible forms of speech may also be called languages. For example, Hindi and Urdu are mutually intelligible, and Sweden and Norway's language are similar, but those are called languages for nationalistic reasons.
The next chapter is language and worldview. There is an interesting theory about culture and language from Benjamin Lee Whorf and Edward Sapir called Whorfian hypothesis, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, or the theory of linguistic relativity. It has two forms. The first one is strong linguistics determinisms. This form asserts that language completely determines thought. Your worldview is so strongly determined by your language that you live in a different universe from speakers of other language. And the next is weak linguistic relativity. These forms argues that language makes the expression of some thoughts easier than the others. We can understand other cultures, but we may find it difficult to express the concepts of these cultures in our language. But it has the contradictory statement that, according to some linguists stated from Hill 1988, Sapir and Wolf did not give the strong form at all. As for linguistic relativity, there have been many experiments to confirm to what extent human language are variable and how we can relate this variability to culture. The language and color terms. Berlin K. 1989-1969 were tested the linguistic relativity by comparing color terms in different languages. They gave 329 color squares to speakers of 98 languages with instruction to arrange them into the basic colors of their language. And you know, the result is people pick black, white, and red at first. So we can conclude that first, the human mind is programmed to think in this manner. Second, the strong version of the Sapir word is wrong. Our perception is not determined by our language alone, but it is also determined by some common human ways of understanding reality or cognitive universals. The examples of language and color terms. In Pashto, the word scene is used for green and blue. This does not mean that green and blue are seen as the same, but they are seen as different shades of a color which comes under the broader category of scene. We may consider scarlet, pink, shocking pink, purple, and other shades of redness as red. However, another culture might have a language with words which regard them not as shades of red, but different colors. In the kinship terms and worldview, we have two examples in the English and the Urdu language. I met my cousin. It does not tell whether this cousin was male or female and related from father's or mother's side. But in Urdu, Mein Khala Zat Bahen Se Mila, or the literal translation is, I met my mother's sister's daughter. It is clear that the speaker met the female related to him in such and such a way.
The next is language and gender. Firstly, I would like to explain the difference between sex and gender. So, sex is a biological reality. For example, is human beings are mostly born as male and female. Some very few individuals may be born as having the physical features of both sexes. Yet others may be psychologically inclined to feel like females even when they have male sexual organs and vice versa. While gender is how sexual differences are played out in societies, it refers to the way a female or male is expected to behave. Gender is constructed by us human beings in our societies. Language also plays a role in constructing gender. But there is a list of devices that are used in English for registering bias against women, taken from Lia Litoselli in 2006. The first is sex specification. Sex is specified when one mentions a trade, profession, or role. For example, the English term authors. We now use the more neutral author without specifying the sex of the person in question. The second is gratuitous modifiers. These are said to diminish prestige and draw attention to the sex. For example, the term lady doctor in the hospital is used often. So doctor is assumed to a man. This makes women feel that while it is normal for men to be doctor, but not for women. And the term male nurse is used, since just nurse refers to a female nurse. Then lexical gaps or under-lexicalization, not having enough words to describe the same kind of behavior in men and women. For example, both men and women can be promiscuous, but the terms for women of this kind are far more than those for men. And the fourth is semantic derogation. A word when used for women gets degraded while equivalent terms for men do not. For example, the term Mrs. come to mean a woman kept for sexual purposes, whereas master still means one who owns or is in control of something. Next is asymmetrically gendered language item. Single word used for women without similar words for men. For example, the title Mrs. was used for married women and Miss was an unmarried woman, but there was nothing to show that a man was married. It is still Mr. Right? This was objected to by feminists because it meant that women were identified in relation to men. And the last is connotation of words. Word may mean one thing literally, but have negative implication. It has denotative and connotative meaning. For example, hot means having a high temperature. However, its connotation is that the person is sexually attractive. In South Asia, calling a girl with hot will be taken as an insult. Then there is sexist language. That biased before is called sexist language, or the language which discriminates against women on account of the gender roles expected from them and the stereotype these have given rise to. However, the ideological force which subordinate women are changing slowly. So more languages have ways to show gender. Let's take a look at the slide. We have three examples in English, Urdu, and Hindi. Urdu, Hindi, and Persian. In English, we know that she went, he went, and it went. The pronouns she and he refer to the female and male gender respectively, and it refers to neutral. In Urdu Hindi, Jara Gaya and Sardi Gaya. Jara means summer and it has masculine grammatical gender, while Sardi means winter and it has feminine grammatical gender. And in Persian, Raft, neither the verb nor the pronoun indicates the gender. In short, different languages indicate gender differently, but the relationship between these and the way women are actually treated in society is too complex to be determined by language alone. Just because Persian refers to men and women in the same manner doesn't mean that they are treated alike in society. And the classic study of this is by Robin Lakoff about the study of women's language, who says that women language has certain special features, such as take questions, isn't it, aren't you? Rising tone of declarative, word like charming, and so on. And later, some scholars suggested that women are more cooperative as conversationalists and care for the ego of the other person. Language and gender can be studied in relation to the media, the workplace, the classroom, and in discourses of various kinds.
And now is the last chapter of our presentations. It is linguistic politeness. Politeness is that which is considered gratifying by the addressee. It is a matter of subjective interpretation and is not necessarily bound to verbal or non-verbal signals without reference to context. Linguistic politeness, and the example if young two people meet friends who greet each other with tricks or abusive words, it will not be rudeness because it will mean that the friends are really intimate with each other. And the second, in some places, if you meet your professor and address him by his first name without the honorific, it can be interpreted as rudeness and insensitivity. Yet another aspect of relation between linguistic politeness and power is that terms of prestige change according to the power of the community which uses them. For instance, when the British started ruling South Asia, the older titles and forms of address which carried respect earlier became less prestigious, and the British forms came to be endowed with prestige. So this is the table of Indian and British terms in the northwestern provinces in the 1850s.
Well, maybe that's all of our presentation about sociolinguistic. If you have any questions, suggestion, or maybe you would like to add some additional information about sociolinguistic, please just write them in the discussion forum in Bismarck. We are really sorry for our mistakes. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.